before the break, we discussed the situation with Barcelona. We now discuss De Bruyne's comments on a potential move to Saudi Arabia. And on top of that, Manchester City's lawsuit against the Premier League. A lot to unpack with this. But first of all, Kevin De Bruyne, he came out with for me, some comments that surprised me hugely, and some comments that really opened up, his perspective. And he was very honest with these comments, which generally football players, they happen to be very mysterious when it comes to their future and all that. And especially with a move like this, a move that has potential of getting criticized, this is not something that they're gonna come out and say right away. And I applaud Kevin De Bruyne for his honesty, especially in a time of a lot of uncertainty amongst what he's gonna do. Usually, if he's discussing something like this, it's gonna be something that it's gonna be something that's immediately happening. But this is something he's still thinking about. So I'm surprised by this, but he has, he said in his comments he is open to the Saudi Pro League because of the incredible amount of money that that could be offered from Saudi Arabia. He has 1 year left on his deal at Manchester City, and he has been previously linked with the move to Saudi Arabia. But there's been plenty of players that's been linked there. There's been sources that said De Bruyne's group entourage visited 10 Saudi clubs in May, and and he has admitted that he's tempted by the money that the Saudi can offer. At my age, this is what he said. At my age, you have to be open to everything. You're talking about an incredible amounts of money in what may be the end of my career. Sometimes you have to think about that. If I play there for 2 years, I'll be able to earn an incredible amount of money. Before that, I had to play football for 15 years. I may not even reach that amount yet. Then you have to think about what that could mean next. But at the moment, I haven't had to think about it yet. Yeah. Wow. Very honest in that situation. He also continued to talk. This is also another thing he said. There are conversations that we are increasingly having as a family. I still have 1 year left on my contract, so I have to think about what could happen. My eldest son is now 8 years old and knows nothing about England. He asked how long I'll play for City. Once the moment comes, we have to deal with it in a certain way. Yeah. It is an incredible amount of money that he could potentially be offered to go and be Saudi club. And this is a Kevin De Bruyne that still has plenty to give at 32-33. So that's going to be an added initiative for a Saudi club to come in with a crazy lucrative deal, because Kevin De Bruyne still has a lot to offer. This is Kevin De Bruyne that's missed some stretches over the past few years. He only played 18 games this Premier League campaign because of injury. And, he has 1 year left, and he wants to look out for his money. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all. I think this is a move that he has to think about. And it's an opportunity for him for generational wealth. And at the end of the day, it's at the end of the day, it's like a decision when you're making these kind of crossroads. It's a decision. You want to gain the generational wealth, or do you want to squeeze out as much of your prime that you have left? That's really up for Kevin De Bruyne, his decision to make. He has been injured over the past few years. When I've seen him on the pitch, I don't see any sort of decline. But obviously, with the fact that he is 33, he is closer to the end than the beginning. That's not to be argued with. But it's at the end of the day, it really comes down to him, and he has to make the decision on whether or not he wants to squeeze as much out of his prime, or if he wants to go on to Saudi. Now also there's the deal with Pep Guardiola, him potentially leaving at the end of the season. Maybe he wants to, maybe he extends it for one, because it's looking like he hasn't announced it yet, but it's, it's a potential chance that next year might be Guardiola's last season at City. City want to know by December whether or not that's the case, which is fair and understandable. But it's, there's a possibility. Maybe that's the added initiative for Kevin De Bruyne to stay on for one last season with Pep, then make that move to Saudi, just see out his contract at City, then move to Saudi. When it comes to, despite him still being in his prime, maybe if he wanted to leave City, and I don't see any other European team that he'd want to go to. He has already won it all at Manchester City, and I don't think he won't go to any other Premier League team because of his tie with City. Maybe a team in Spain, a Barcelona, Real Madrid. Him finish out, play a few years there. Maybe go back to Germany and play for Vincent Kompany, his former teammate. Maybe I could see that as a potential, but it's looking like Saudi Arabia is in Kevin De Bruyne's cards soon. With the comments that he made, you have to recognize that. Also, Manchester City, they have sued the Premier League. Yes, Manchester City have sued the Premier League, the league that they just won. They've sued the Premier League. They launched legal action against the Premier League over financial rules ahead of their own 115 charge hearing. This is very complicated. Manchester City, champions of the Premier League, suing the Premier League. Manchester City have accused the Premier League of discrimination against golf ownership, and they're also suing them for damages. They've also challenged the Premier League's association party transaction rulers, claiming they are unlawful, the laws that they're being charged with. And a private arbitration hearing is going to be scheduled next week regarding it, which is kind of interesting because, they're kind of admitting that they did their charges by saying the laws were unlawful. But at the end of the day, majority, not even more than a majority, 14 out of 20 Premier League clubs vote on this happening. So that makes no sense to me. But, yeah, okay, well, it makes no sense to me, but let's just get back to the main point. So the Premier League ATP rules were brought in 2021 after Saudi took over Newcastle, and 20 teams in the Premier League were informed about this, and it got voted in. So let's get that out of the way. Manchester City are basically arguing that sponsors should have their own freedom to decide how much they want to pay, rather than a figure individually verified as market value. It's a bunch of financial things, but they wanted to defend themselves against the 115 charges that were hit in February 2023 after a 4-year investigation, and this seems like a good way to try to make them the victim here, and that they're being unlawfully accused and all that. I think it's a good PR spin by them. But at the end of the day, UEFA has also came out and charged Manchester City with financial charges, and City were able to escape punishment, not because they didn't do the charges, but because when you look at the rules exactly, UEFA weren't able to get the lawsuit done in time. So Manchester City, they have a lot to do to defend themselves. I'm not gonna lie. They have a lot to defend themselves. I think the way that they've behaved sort of has been scandalous when it comes to these lawsuits. Unfair towards golf ownership. Well, they're not the only team owned by golf ownership. Newcastle United are also owned by golf ownership. So Yeah, interesting and confusing at the same time.